Namaste, and happy Diwali to everyone. I was recently looking at Facebook, and on Facebook I saw a little video from America's First Lady, Michelle Obama. She was doing some Bollywood dancing with her friends, and wishing us all a happy Diwali. And I liked that very much. I thought that was very sweet, that this little cross-cultural event that she was doing. And I remembered that when her husband was elected the first time, that they also put out a video. This was a little bit less joyful. It was just a video that explained what Diwali was and wishing everyone a happy Diwali. And it's very nice to see that. I don't think any presidents before them did anything about Diwali. But I thought it would be fun to share that with you. I thought I would talk today about light. Is an interesting thing to talk about with Diwali. And I wanted to remind us all that as disciples and devotees, it's our job to share the light that we receive from the masters, no matter how little we may seem to have any of it, how much we may assume that we are not qualified to share the light. That's not an issue, or that's not an excuse, shall I say. We all have the light to share. And remember what Sri Yukteswar said to Master when he asked him to go to America, and Master said, "Oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to stay and, I don't want to get involved in all of these kinds of things." And he said, "What? You just want to keep it all for yourself?" So this is what we want to remember. We're here as devotees and disciples. It's our job to share the light. How else will people learn anything about spiritual life, especially with our masters who are not here in the body? And how will they find out? How will they know anything about spiritual life, except if we share with others? And we may say, "Oh, well, I don't know enough. I'm not, as I say, not qualified." Well, let me tell you a story. That's my own experience. When I was young, just out of college, I think it was, I lived in a house with some housemates. And one day, several of their friends came over to borrow something, I guess, or something, I don't know. They were only there for about 5 minutes, and they left. And after they left, I remembered one person in that group who had some quality, I couldn't put a name to it, had a quality that I saw, that I really wanted in myself. I suppose it was something like peace or calmness, or maybe a kind of joy that I wasn't used to. Whatever it was very, very magnetic to me. And as I say, they'd already left, so I didn't know if I would ever even see that person again. But as it turned out, they lived close by, and they were friends with my housemates, and so I did see them sometimes. And I got to know the one there that was the one with that quality, that peace or whatever that was. And so over time, I got to know him a little bit. But again, I went on one adventure, he went off on another one, and I didn't really expect to see him at all again. And then time went by, and my life got more complicated, and I had a tragedy in my life that I was really having a difficult time facing and working with. And I had been, someone very close to me died suddenly at the age of 24, and I just couldn't accept that, and I couldn't get away from my grief. It was so dark. I didn't know what to do, and I had nothing to fall back on, nothing for comfort, because I had rejected the religion that I was brought up in, which was without joy, and I couldn't even feel anything for that. So I had nothing except grief and darkness. And so I was just kind of stumbling along in life and trying to figure out what to do. And very soon after that, I ran into this person. Do you see the hand of the guru in here? Something was happening, for guidance was happening that I was not aware of. And so I ran into this person and I told him what happened. And guess what book he gave me to read? So he gave me the autobiography. And I took it home and I read it. And I read a few pages of it, and it was so fantastic and different and unexplainable to me and incomprehensible to me. Most of the things are just way beyond anything that I could really relate to. And I closed the book after a few pages. That was all I could. That's all I could take, was just those few pages. But it drew me back, and I kept going back to it. Every day I would read some until I just couldn't, my head was splitting, and I would close it. And then I would be drawn back again. This went on for, as you can guess, for many days, weeks, I guess it was months, before I actually finally finished the book. But in the process of it, that darkness began to fade and was replaced by the light. And as I think back on it now, my memory of it is literally darkness in my mind. I felt that my consciousness was about this big, and it was mostly dark. But as the light came in, by just reading those words and not understanding them, but just reading them, the light came in and filled me. And slowly, as I read through the book, more and more light came in, and less darkness. The darkness was gone. And when I finally finished the book, I was then back to normal. I could function in the normal way again, but something was different. Of course, I had the guru. But I was not ready to be a disciple of Yogananda, but I knew that he was there with me, that his vibration, his light was always with me. And I remembered, years later, Swamiji said to us that he had said something to Yogananda at one time about what a wonderful book it was. And Yogananda's answer was, I put my vibrations into it. And this is what happens when we consciously try to relate to others in the sense of sharing the light. In one way or another, when we do this, the vibrations are there and they touch people. And if we ask to be used as an instrument of the light, that is shared with whoever it is that we meet, whoever it is that takes our classes, whoever we see on the street, at the store, people that we work with. If we consciously ask every day, use me as your instrument of light, we can share that light with everyone we meet. And we might say, oh, but I don't have enough experience. I don't know anything about explaining these things to other people. Swamiji used to say an interesting thing. He said that the people that are the best ones that, let's say there's a new person coming to visit, they're coming here, for example, and who should they speak with if they want to know something about Ananda? Should we wait and try to find somebody who with a lot of experience, maybe one of the acharyas or something? He said, no, actually the best person for that person to speak with is somebody who's not been here very long, that doesn't know a whole lot yet, because somehow there's a bit of trust there. If you meet somebody with lots and lots of stuff to tell you about the organization and all the, all the rules and regulations and all this stuff, it kind of puts everybody off in a way. But if somebody very honestly says, well, I've only been coming now for a week, but I do enjoy it, this is something that people can understand, because that person, that's the new person, is probably going to, be in just about the same place as the person's only been here for a week. And so we don't want to look at this and say, oh, well, but I don't have enough experience. This person that I talked about, that I saw, came to the house and then left and all of that, and I ran into him later. He didn't have any experience. He wasn't somebody who knew a whole lot. He learned a bunch after I had met him for the first time, but still he wasn't, he was just somebody new like us. Well, less new, more new than we are, as a matter of fact. So it doesn't matter. What it really matters is your consciousness, your willingness to be an instrument. I believe it's Sri Yukteswar who said, the instrument is blessed by that which passes through it. And the more we practice this, the more we do our best to share the light with all, with whoever we see. The more we ask for guidance in doing this, the more we are blessed, and our consciousness begins to expand, and we become then more and more like the gurus, in the sense of having an expanded consciousness and having a higher awareness. And so on Diwali today, let's think about the light and how we can share it, because we will be, in fact, blessed by sharing the light. Please.
Happy Diwali, everybody. It's a festival of lights, and it's so enjoyable walking up and down the street here in the neighborhood. You see all the houses decorated, and it really is uplifting. It's something about when you see beautiful light, look at all the beautiful saris that I see, and it's just, there's a certain joyfulness that comes out when you see the colors, and it's just uplifting. And I was thinking, when I was a student in college, I studied anthropology, which we would study different cultures, and something I noticed later, I didn't notice it at the time, but particularly when I came to know these teachings and comparing them around the world, I don't think that there is a culture in this world that celebrates the darkness. Now, there are subsets, you might say, of in different cultures of cults and so on that perhaps celebrate darkness. But as a full culture, we celebrate the light. We don't celebrate the darkness. And why is that? It's something universal, and it's something intrinsically within each one of us we recognize, and it's expressed in almost, I think, cultures I've studied, that's expressed in almost all cultures. And so we have Ram defeating Ravana, then he going back to Ayodhya, and the lights that we celebrate in his journey back. And we find in other cultures the same thing. We find this theme of reclaiming the light. And even we look in different scriptures and we see these references to the light. It says, the Spirit moved upon the water, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. That's how the Bible begins in the very first chapter. Let there be light. And we recognize that because it resonates with something that's true within each one of us. Ram follows that journey, follows the lights, the pathway lit with lights. And in the same way, what is represented there, of course, is our own inward journey, going back to that divine light. And as we are taught in the path of yogic scriptures, that we're going back to that light within ourselves, the light to the spiritual eye, making that journey, transcending this world of darkness. Darkness itself, we have to remember this. Often we look in the world And sometimes in the scriptures, some of the very best characters are the dark characters. They have a certain power to them. And of course, it wouldn't be a great story if the villain didn't have a great magnetism too, because then the hero, in order to become the true hero, has to be able to overcome that darkness. And we look in all the scriptures and we see that there's always a dark character, there's a light character, and the hero and the villain. But we have to remember that when we think about light and darkness, darkness has no reality in and of itself. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Light is a true reality, but that light becomes obscured, it becomes shadowed, it becomes eclipsed at times. You might say the moon comes before the sun, and we're in darkness for a time, and then the light comes back. And we celebrate that in every culture, and because it reflects what's going on within ourselves. And this is something to remember. And it's something that was emphasized by Paramahansa Yogananda, by our guru, that we are children of the light. It's our reality. That's our nature. That's who we are. But yet, as children, sometimes naughty children, we sometimes make mistakes. But we're not defined by our mistakes. We're not defined by the times that we stumble. We're defined by the times that we get up and we start to run and we make progress. That's who we are. And it's important to remember that. Paramahansa Yogananda said, never identify with your mistakes. I am a sinner, and I just, what people, you hear this sometimes, people say, well, what do you expect? I'm only human. I can't, that's as if that humanity of mistakes is my reality, and it's somehow a great effort for me to rise above that. But yes, it does take effort, but we must rise above it because we're reclaiming what is rightfully ours, just as the hero reclaims the kingdom after being exiled for a long period of time. On Thursday, a few days ago, we have our Thursday satsang, and Sagar gave a very nice discourse on the Sagar about how this master used to say that this world is but a movie. It's light and shadow. And as long as we are in this movie, we have to recognize that there's always going to be plus, minus, there's always going to be light and shadow, because if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have a movie. But the goal of the movie is to realize the nature of the movie, and we root for the hero. We root for the good person, and then when we're finished with the movie, we leave it behind. We don't play and get involved in the movie. This is the temptation, of course, is we're in this movie, Ram defeats Ravana, and he transcends this movie. And we have to remember, he goes beyond the movie. And that's what we want to do, is we want to overcome the darkness and enter in for once and for all into the light. And Master used to say, don't get involved. Some people like to, in other words, don't get involved in the movie. Some people like to, they win, and they love that winning, so they gamble again. And they lose, and they win, and they gamble, and they win, and they gamble. Don't get involved, Master said. Get away from that. Because as long as we're in this world of duality, there's always going to be a certain element of disappointment, a certain element of darkness, a certain element of the negative side. It's innate in the very fabric of this reality. And overcoming once and then going back into the movie, it's just we have to repeat it over and over again. Don't play with the negative side and think that it's easily conquered. I read a book many years ago. It was a book of fiction in which there were two groups of people. One of them were very virtuous, very good, and the other were not. They were the opposite, and they were at war with one another, these two parties, these two groups. And the leader of the negative side, he had appeared. The two parties were at war, but a fellow appeared, and then nobody knew exactly where he came from, but he was very magnetic, and he took control of the negative side, the forces, and he became their leader until finally there was a great conflict and the negative side was defeated and the good side wins. But I thought what was very interesting about this book and quite insightful is the author didn't end the book at that point. The last chapter is the leader of the negative side finds himself washed up onto a beach. See, he had been destroyed in this conflagration at the end of this battle. But he wakes up and he's on a beach, and he finds himself on the beach. And he gets up, he dusts himself off, and he's on a beautiful paradise island. And he goes into the greenery, and he meets some very simple people there. Very simple people, and they welcome him into their village. And he smiles. And he goes in and he joins them, and then the book ends there. In other words, he was evil. He was evil incarnate, and he was destroyed in that moment, but yet he wasn't destroyed. He just started up again in the next place, and the story went on. And so it is for us. The story goes on, and we have to be Ram, destroying Ravana. And then remember what Ram does next. And then he returns to his kingdom. He doesn't continue to fight more demons. Then he continues on his journey, and he enters into his true kingdom. And so this is where we are also. We need to fight to the best of our ability to overcome darkness in our lives. Do our very best, but realize that we are destined. Whether it's in this lifetime or another lifetime, we're destined to win that battle, particularly if we draw God to our side, draw the forces of goodness into our life, and it is inevitable that we will win. And then as we win, remember, we then go into the light, because that's our destiny. We are children of light, and that's what we celebrate. Here, we celebrate that in India and Diwali, but of every culture, to some degree, we celebrate that. It's an important festival. Now, we see all the lights, and of course, we enjoy it. And this is good. We should enjoy it, because life was made not just for toil and trouble and overcoming. It was also made for enjoyment. We should enjoy. We should be educated, and we should enjoy. This is what that master said, but oh, how few are educated and how few learn. But we should enjoy. So we enjoy Diwali, but underneath it also we remember that there's a true message here. And we carry that message through. When the holiday season's over and we go back to work, back to the office, let's carry that spirit with us. And I think the way to carry that spirit with us is not just to remember the joy of the festival, the joy of the holiday that we're participating in, but the way to remember that is, as Sadhanadevi said, is to be an instrument for it, carrying it. Just as you are at a holiday and you have a basket of sweets, and you go back to the office, what do? You share the sweets with everybody. And in the sharing of the joy, in the sharing of the light of the festival, in that you bring it alive again. And that can be day after day and week after week, month after month, until once again the year rolls around and we renew every year at this time of year. We renew the spirit of Diwali, renew it outwardly, but we can also every day, every week, renew it in our heart day by day, the spirit of Diwali. So many happy blessings to all of you. So let us celebrate this festival season in the true high spirit of celebrating the light within each one of us.